In this video, we're gonna dive into the Solarwinds hack and try to make sense of it all. Hi everybody, welcome to StudioSec. Thank you for watching. Like this video if it's helpful, comment down below with your observations of the Solarwinds attack. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, anything. And subscribe for more content. I'm posting more every week. Well, if you aren't already familiar with the Solarwinds hack, you're in the exact right place. Here's a link to a video where I kind of talked about it right out the bat, but today we're just gonna kind of unpack some things here and really try to understand a few things here and clarify a little bit from that video even. In fact, one of the clarifications I wanna make, and thank you to Greg Burns for your comment on the last video. You clarified it there, but I wanted to kind of elaborate here. DLL, which I mentioned a lot in that video, is a dynamic link library. And for those of you that may not know what a dynamic link library is, that basically allows multiple programs or applications to access routine tasks. That way they don't have to keep those tasks, natively or include them in their own programming and exclusive to themselves. It just allows, multiple programs to run at the same time doing the exact same task if they need to. It's just a handy way, to reduce the size of applications. These are also shared libraries, so that's why all these applications and programs, they're all able to access it. Now, the reason that this is important to know is that is what the attackers used to Trojanize Orion, which is the platform that Solarwinds sends out to vendors. And again, you can check that video that I already linked. And it'll talk about what Orion is, who SolarWinds are. We'll clarify that here as well. Orion is the platform. It's an application that SolarWinds, which is a company, provides. So SolarWinds is the tech company, and Orion is an IT management program that is widely used. Just about every company probably, has either Orion or a similar application. It allows them to manage and track and monitor their IT infrastructure. Now, the issue here is that Orion requires a lot of access to be able to do that. You have to know what server does what, how to access it, how's the CPU usage on that, who is accessing any server at any time, those kinds of things. Now that is a lot of access for Orion to have. But whenever you're an IT admin, that's information you need to know, and having all of that in one application is a very handy thing. Now, while it's a very handy thing for IT admins, it's a very handy thing for an attacker to have as well. And so, the attackers were able to put information in a data link library that basically allowed them to gain persistence or gain access and persistence into client networks. So anyone that downloaded the Trojanized version of Orion, and then they used Orion in their environment, it would automatically ping a random, IP address every time. But it was always pinging back to a command and control center that the attackers used. You shut it down, you start Orion back up, it'll ping again. It'll make sure that, the command and control server is able to continue to connect, and you can't really track it. It was different IPs every single time. So, if you're looking for IPs that, maybe are coming up multiple times that you don't recognize, normally you can put a block on those. But if it's a random IP every single time, well, that makes it a little bit more challenging, because who's to say that random IP isn't a client or a customer or something like that. Now, just to kind of remind everybody here of the scope of this attack, this was used widely pretty much everywhere. It targeted the vast majority of the Fortune 500. Some figures say, up to over 400 of the Fortune 500. And it targeted, many government entities. Now it's already confirmed that the US Treasury Department has been breached. And FireEye, a cybersecurity company, was actually one that was breached. But and I'll let you watch my video again. That kind of gives you the chronology of the FireEye breach and then the Solarwinds breach, but they are linked. In fact, FireEye discovered they were breached because they had a Trojanized version of Orion. Now, an important thing to understand about this attack is that this is just the beginning. Okay, this may not even really be the real attack. You know, the attackers might have targeted SolarWinds in order to target one of the clients of SolarWinds. Now, this is because SolarWinds is a vendor to many different clients. So any of those clients could be someone of interest. A lot of them are government agencies. A lot of them are Fortune 500 companies. And all of those are going to be of interest to the attackers. And we're going to talk a little bit about these attackers here in a minute, but I wanted to make sure that I made this clarification. It's an important distinction. This could be just the tip of the iceberg. This attack only allows the attackers access into the networks of all the clients. So, you know, they haven't necessarily, I mean, they broke Orion in a way. You know, you can still use Orion, but it's if you have one of the Trojanized versions, it won't run exactly the way that SolarWinds intended, because the attackers were able to break it. And so if you're running the Trojanized version, you're running the normal Orion application. However, you're also pinging the command and control center, which you don't want. Now, the attackers, now that they have access to the client networks because they're using Orion, they have access to all kinds of important data on those client networks. Remember all that information that we talked about earlier: IP addresses, networking information, different accesses, you know, hardware configurations, those kinds of things. That's all going to be there on Orion, and that's what attackers can use. Now, that's recon data. That's a ton of reconnaissance information. So if, you know, say they want to attack a client of SolarWinds, well, they already Trojanized Orion, and for months until this breach was uncovered, they were able to collect that data and on all the clients that had the Trojanized versions. So it's a lot, but that probably wasn't their main objective. If you think of a traditional attack, you know, you gain reconnaissance, you gain access, and the next step is to, you know, escalate your privilege, or just, you know, gain more access into the network. And so they got their access with Orion. They had persistence, and now it's kind of a question of, well, what else did they do? Who did they do this to? Which clients were they after? And this is information that we're going to have to wait on. Honestly, it's going to come out, hopefully, and we'll just have to keep our eyes on the news and see who's announcing, you know, what they've learned. But this is going to take a little while to figure out, because, you know, it's a pretty big deal. So just remember that while this is being labeled as the most massive cyber attack yet, we may not even have the full picture yet. It's massive, but we don't really know how massive. It could be bigger than we already know. So it's a pretty big deal. Now, another point I want to clarify, if you've been following this news, in case you're getting a little confused, because there are three names really out there that you might be reading and kind of be like, well, what is this and what does this have to do with this attack? So SolarWinds, we've already clarified, is the company that owns the software. So the software being Orion, right? And they're the vendor to all these clients. Solargate, if you've read that in any of the stories, that's the designation Microsoft has given to this kind of attack. Or to this specific attack. And so if you're reading in any Microsoft documentation or in any documentation that's referencing Microsoft documentation, they might be using Solargate because that is the name that, you know, Microsoft has given to this attack. Now, if you see Sunburst, that is the name that FireEye gave to this attack. And so it's just the same as Solargate, it's just Sunburst. So, you know, easy distinction, but I wanted to make sure, in case you're seeing that out there, that's what those mean. Now, if you're a business owner or you're in a leadership role in your company, what does this mean for you? Well, the big takeaway right now is going to be verify that your third parties, that your vendors, that they're all clean. Well, also make sure that you're clean. You know, if you're running Orion, make sure you're not running a Trojanized version of Orion. That might require a rollback. So, and that's not always clean, but it might be necessary for your own security. keep an eye out on SolarWinds information or Microsoft information or whoever on information on cleaner versions, and you know, make sure that cybersecurity researchers have verified that those are clear versions. You know, it's important to take people at their word, but you know, trust but verify. You know, and this is just a reminder, even with trusted third parties, trust but verify. You know, and then unfortunately, this is just a situation that, you know, you could trust but verify, and you might not have even realized that it was a Trojanized version. I mean, this is a really sophisticated cyber attack. Don't be disappointed in, you know, the situation you're in. But that being said, that doesn't mean that there are things for you to do right now to make sure that your company is secure. Just make sure that, you know, you're not on a Trojanized version of Orion, that you're maintaining proper access control, you're keeping an eye on, you know, what endpoints your network is reaching out to, and that you're not, you know, being contacted by any random IP addresses unless it's one that you know to be looking out for. I also think it's really important to make a statement about attribution on this attack. And this goes for every other cyber attack, all right? Until the Department of Justice, until another government body or any other investigative entity has come out and confirmed that an attack was completed by any specific organization or individual, it's conjecture. This attack has already been kind of guessed or claimed to have been the work of the Russian SVR. It's APT-29, also nicknamed Cozy Bear. So that it's known that this is already a nation state attack. It has to be, due to its complexity, due to its scale. I mean, pretty much any, you know, cyber criminal organization isn't really capable of this kind of attack, and you know, the capability of being able to plant a Trojanized version into all the clients of SolarWinds, that's a pretty wide scale attack. And to be able to house all that data once you get it, because again, it's recon, you're pulling that information in, well, that's got to be stored somewhere. That's going to require some pretty large data farms, right? So that would have to be a nation state logically, right? But that being said, who? We don't know which nation state. So again, it's already claimed to have been the Russian SVR, which is kind of like their foreign intelligence arm of the old KGB. But until, you know, you see the Department of Justice come out and say, hey, it was them, you know, it was Cozy Bear, which is the nickname for the SVR. Until it was them, or until you know that they've come out and they've said that, you know, you really have to, again, trust but verify. Know that, okay, well, there must be a reason that they're saying this, but at the same time, until we have evidence and until, you know, a higher government body has come out and said, okay, we know for sure that this is, you know, who it is, there is a chance that it's not. Now, that said, I don't want it to seem like I'm saying that it isn't Russia. You know, it absolutely very well could be, and it has a lot of the traits that, you know, their attacks tend to carry. Something like this is a very methodical kind of attack. Notice how they haven't broken anything aside from Orion yet, you know, and they didn't, again, like I said earlier, they didn't really break Orion, they just Trojanized it, you know, but they're not really turning any lights off. They're not, you know, trying to destroy or steal anything quite yet that we know of, you know. A lot of it is, you know, they're biding their time. They're gaining access slowly and surely. Well, that's kind of a trait that Cozy Bear has taken in the past, and that the SVR is known to take. And so that's why it's considered. That's why they are considered to be the main culprit, and that's legit. That is a legitimate concern. But that being said, I'm just saying, you know, be objective, do some research, make sure that, you know, you're not rushing to judgment, and you're paying attention for more information. Now, until we know the true extent of this attack, we must assume the worst. Now, best case scenario, they didn't get too far. The sheer extent of the data that they were receiving was too much, and they lost track of their scope. You know, maybe it was a cyber criminal organization after all, and they got a little over their head. And despite having such crazy access, you know, this attack just kind of fizzled out, just because they gained so much access, they just did not know what to do. That's the best case scenario. Is that naive? Absolutely. We must assume the worst. So we should assume that it was an nation state. We should assume that they know exactly what they were after. And we should assume, you know, whatever vulnerability, you know, there might be that Orion might have been able to pick up in your own organization, they probably know about it. And so that's a lot. That's a lot to take in. So make sure that you're paying attention to that, but don't be paranoid. Do not be paranoid. This is not the time to crash. This is not the time to freak out. It's a time to be, you know, very strategic in how you approach this situation. There is a wrong way of handling this, and that's doing nothing. And there's a right way of, you know, okay, well, let's figure this out. Let's methodically, you know, attack this problem. Let's get to a safer distribution of Orion or another IT management app. Let's make sure that our third parties are solid. Let's make sure that our vulnerabilities are being dealt with. You know, let's keep tabs on, you know, who we're reaching out to in the internet, that kind of thing. But as long as you're just being careful, you're using common sense, you're not getting overwhelmed, you're not being paranoid, you're being vigilant. That's what's important. So with all that, like if this video was helpful, comment down below with your thoughts on SolarWinds. If there's anything you want to bring up, any news that you found that was interesting, send it on down and subscribe for more information I'm posting every week. Thank you, everybody.